Welcome to the Wandering Road, a place where the unseen moves all around us. The stories you'll hear aren't just whispered legends, they're shadows that cling, footsteps that follow, and whispers that never fade. Every turn pulls you closer to the unknown, and once you've heard what waits here, the night will never feel the same again.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Wandering Road podcast. I'm your host, Chris, and today is going to be a solo episode in which I'm going to be reading a listener submission about one of their paranormal experiences. I normally have Dean with me doing these, but due to some scheduling conflicts, unfortunately, he couldn't be in for this one. So this may be a shorter episode. I know we try to go for at least 45 an hour, but I hope you enjoyed today's episode with me sharing this listener submission. I have not decided whether I'm going to make this a video episode or not. I don't know how receptive people will be just watching me read someone's submission. So it may be audio only. If I do release it on video, it is what it is. You can stare at me for 20 minutes just reading someone's story. So Jim had sent this over to us. So thankful that you sent this over to us, Jim. I know you sent this over to us a little bit ago, but due to some hectic scheduling and life and timing, we haven't been able to get to this episode now. And I've been wanting to read this ghost story of yours for quite some time now. Before I start the show, if anybody has their own paranormal ghost stories, alien stories, cryptids, whatever, that you would like for us to share on the show, I could do it solo. I could do it with Dean. Just shoot us an email to twroadpodcast@gmail.com. All of that contact information will be in the episode description. If you are watching on YouTube, it'll be on the episode description below. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, that contact information will be in the episode description there as well. So let's go ahead and kick off today's show. Hey, Chris and Dean. Big fan of your podcast and your discussions with JJ from the Southern Demonology podcast and the Paranormal Rundown. I had a good phone convo with JJ back in July and sent the email below afterward. I recently messaged him saying I'd been thinking about sending the same to you guys, and he said that I should. So here you go. Keep doing what you do. I really enjoy listening and learning from all you guys. So much good stuff. Best, Jim. Thank you for the kind words, Jim. And again, we appreciate you sending this story over. Jim begins his story. This isn't a ghost story per se. I'm not sure how to categorize it, even though it has ghostly aspects to it. To start, I need to go backward a bit to give more context. Beginning around 2012, I began experiencing an uptick in activity in my home that increased over the next several years. It wasn't until 5 years later that it got to the point that I realized I really needed some help. I first heard about shaman Michael Robichaud in 2017 while following and practically stalking Joni Mayhan on a few paranormal podcasts I was listening to at the time. She spoke about her long life of similar experiences and the paranormal book she wrote sharing them. One of them is called Ghost Magnet, which is exactly what I felt like. Things had gotten so bad for me that I eventually reached out by email asking if she could suggest someone to help, and to my surprise, she replied back within hours. After a couple of vetting email conversations, Johnny gave me Michael's contact information. Over the next couple of years, shaman Michael Robichaud, who I now just call my friend Mike, visited remotely with his guides countless times to remove the negative entities and attachments I was attracting. Since those first emails to Johnny, she and I also became quick friends and still are today. That's always great. You know, you make those connections and you keep those connections, Jim. Same thing with me and JJ and a couple of other podcasters in this paranormal sphere. You know, we kind of reached out to one another on a whim to see if we would come on each other's shows. And with me and JJ, it kind of just took off from there. So you always make some interesting people when you involve yourself in this space. I've had nothing but good experiences so far meeting people in the paranormal community. Of course, you have those people that, for lack of better words, they kind of just ignore you. It happens with some of the bigger accounts, but I'm sure they get swamped with so many emails and messages with people trying to reach out to them that it's kind of not their fault. Again, it's always great to meet those people and keep those connections. But Jim's story continues. I've had weird things happen since I can remember, the first being about 3 years old. But it wasn't until my much later years that things got weirder and wilder. Shadow people, Hat Man, thumps, bumps, loud crashes in the other room, only to find everything in order. A couple of times, objects disappeared only to appear in another place, peripheral shadows and movement. A shadow cat, weird fey looking things around the inside and outside of my house. Family pets have also responded to these things, but those are other stories maybe for another day. This one is something that happened much later after I got a handle on that other shit thanks to Mike. This particular thing is something that happened over a year ago and it was particularly disturbing. Lacey died on April 12th, 2024. To say she was the best dog ever isn't an exaggeration. Everybody loved Lacey and she loved everybody and everything. It didn't matter if you were human of any size, a dog, cat, or injured animal in the wild. A possum she discovered in the backyard, or Derp, my neighbor's pet rat. She was always sweet, gentle, caring, and concerned. Along with that, she was a good sized pit bull, the breed that most fear. And I send my sympathies to you, Jim, about Lacey. It's never easy losing a pet. While my wife and I, we have 5 pets right now, 3 cats, 2 dogs, and safe to say they're all senior citizens now, and we've previously lost a cat, about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and it was probably one of the most difficult times that we've ever gone through. So I empathize with you, my friend, and I'm sorry about the loss of Lacey. I'm sure she was a great dog, as you described. And another thing about pit bulls, you are correct. That is the breed that most people fear. I grew up with a pit bull, so I don't mind them, but I feel like that breed of dog gets a really bad rap due to negative media attention, but I'll go ahead and digress. The weekend before she passed at 14 years old, she was happily playing and wrestling with her cousin, my sister's 7-year-old large Akita Shepherd mix. Lacey was happy and playful that day, which is her usual self. As the following week went on, she was losing energy, and each day, not so much her happy self. Came to find out later that week, she had a sudden onset of a mast cell tumor in her right cheek that suddenly made itself known overnight. I made arrangements with an emergency vet, hoping it was an abscessed tooth, only to find out there was nothing that anybody could do. I then made the painful decision to end her suffering. It was a very sad ending to the day, but to add a positive aspect to it, she got to spend the day with me at work and got loved on by everybody I work with. Later at the clinic, their staff doted on her and couldn't have been more empathetic and caring. Every staff member came into the special room to love on her as the preparations were being made. To say she went out with a hell of a bang is an understatement. She left me and this plane knowing she was loved very much. She was the fifth of my family pets to go that way. I wish the other 4 could have had a better experience like Lacey did. For the following weeks, I was mourning her and frankly a bit depressed. LT, little turd, the cat was also showing signs of loss and was very clingy. I found the little turd in the weeds on the side of a service road while on a smoke break near where I worked at the time. She was about 4 weeks old, still had blue eyes, now gold, indicating that she was still probably nursing. Mama Cat must have forgotten to move her when she left the area with her brood. After bringing her home and cleaning all the fleas from her, she bonded with my Bam Bam and Lacey. As she got older, it became apparent that LT was to be a protector and guardian of my property, guarding it from city ferals and other critters much larger than her barely 8-pound self. As she got older, I noticed she was super aware when the weird happened. and would stay next to me when the crazy negative paranormal fuckery was afoot, tracking invisible things through the room or staring at a spot I was picking something up from. So now let's get back to last year's experience. Sometime around the last week of April 2024, I started getting hits on my radar that something negative was around. I've experienced a lot of stuff in the past with negative entities, so I knew the feelings and signs. The feeling of somebody behind you when you're walking out of a room or down the stairs. The feeling that something is watching. The feeling that there's that thing over in the corner just staring at you with hate. And I'll take a pause there, Jim. Well, I want to talk about that a little bit because that is an experience and a feeling that I have had consistently throughout my entire life. And the reason that I say that, I'm looking right at the camera at you, Jim. I guess I'll release this as a video episode. But the reason I say that is because there has to be something. I've had those experiences my entire life. You feel like there's something just right around the corner waiting for you. You feel like if you're walking up the stairs, that that feeling that people make memes about, or there's so many TikTok videos about that when you cut the light and you go up the stairs, there's like this shadow person chasing you up the stairs. That is definitely a real thing. Growing up in that haunted house, there have been quite a few times where you just felt like something was watching you, something was there in the corner that didn't want you to be there. And I will say that whenever I do a recording with other people sharing their paranormal experiences, and some of them share demonic experiences, you get a feeling that whatever that thing was is listening in and is watching. Sometimes I would say that these entities latch on to people that are in a negative state of mind or a depressed state because you mentioned you had to unfortunately put Lacey down in April of 2024. So you being in that psychological state where you just lost your beloved dog and you probably don't want to do anything, you don't want to be bothered. It's like you have that feeling of like, fuck everything. I just lost something so close to me. How do I function? And I'm pretty sure a lot of us get that way. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were certain things being attracted to you just because of that feeling. But I'll go ahead and continue. I never saw these things visually with my eyeballs, only with my mind's eye. That's another thing that I do as well. You close your eyes and you just get this image burnt into your brain of what it could possibly be. But I'll continue. I usually get a fairly clear mental picture in the center of my forehead, exactly what I was mentioning, and a feeling about their energy. In this particular case, I was watching a movie and my attention kept being drawn over to the northwest corner of my dining room. In my mind's eye, this one was dark, shadowy, and very unpleasantly blending into the shadows, but darker than them. Damn, this thing had been here working on me for at least 2 weeks, and I should have picked up on it sooner. Instead, I kept telling myself my feelings were due to mourning Lacey. I could have kicked myself, but instead just internally shook my head and figured better late than never. Now it's time to do something about it. I spent the full week trying several methods that had worked well for me in the past, including Palo Santo incense to clear the negative emotional gunk that had accumulated since Lacey's passing. I used a folk magic ritual with psalms as well as rituals given to me by Mike to attempt to push out the bastard who was here without an invitation. These included blessed sea salt, holy water, the prayer to Saint Michael, and the prayer to Saint Benedict of Nursia. But still, as the week wore on, I continued to feel more drained and depressed with what's the use kind of giving up attitude. I've experienced pretty bad oppression back when I contacted Mike, and this one was looking to be similar. Mike was going through some health issues, and I didn't want to bother him unless absolutely necessary. I had been binge listening to Isaac on the Hidden in the Shadows podcast for several months prior and was really intrigued on how he removes this kind of situation. Why not reach out to Isaac as an experiment to see what he claims he does is legit? I reached out via email and got a response from his wife within 24 hours. We set a time for the following Sunday, May 19th. Immediately after setting the appointment and for the entire week leading up to it, I felt worse and started having thoughts that weren't mine, as well as feelings of doubt, guilt, and of all things, shame. What the fuck? Shame. Seriously? A strong nagging thought of, you don't want to do this, and this is something that won't help you, and you're going to make things worse for yourself. I felt a heavy anxiety and felt more depressed and oppressed as the week went on. It brought on more memories of how it felt right before Mike and his guides came by. It reminded me that I was doing the right thing. The closer it got to Sunday, May 19th, these negative feelings got worse. I'm Reiki 3 attuned, and on the Saturday before I did a few short self treatments throughout the day, which helped lift some of the heaviness I was feeling. I went to bed feeling pretty good and looking forward to my phone meeting with Isaac the next day. That is until I woke up at 1 a.m., finding myself in sleep paralysis after a very intense nightmare. It felt real. It was scary. And I've never had a dream like that in my life, nor do I hope to have one again. Although looking back, the whole situation was pretty cool. This involved a dangerously possessed woman locked in an observation room, hordes of flies coming out of a jar she opened, my companions melting into greenish goo, and an evil red-headed kid that reminded me of Malachi from the first Children of the Corn movies. Once you said evil red-headed kid, I thought of Chucky the doll. At the very end of this dream, I was in a room with the possessed woman, and she morphed into a creature that looked like a mutated cross between a tapir and a wombat before it scurried out of the room. I'd go into it more, but it was very long and very detailed. I struggled to move and couldn't. I remembered I'd heard on more than one occasion that a lot of folks could break the hold by saying the name of Jesus. I always wondered about that, but it had been a decade or more since I had a sleep paralysis episode. I was raised Catholic but left the practice in my late teens. I had a few years of going to a community church claiming to be Christian light when I moved to Richmond, Virginia in 2001. But just like light beer, I lost my taste for it. Funny thing is, even though I'm not religious at all, I have used and do use multiple Catholic prayers and protection medals, which have helped in the past, which I find interesting. Since I'm always looking for the next tool to add to my spiritual anti-bully arsenal, I figured it would be an interesting experiment, if nothing else, to try using his name. I tried yelling Jesus Christ's name, which sounded more like a drooling version of slurring drunk. It eventually became more of a stroke sufferer's mumble of speech, and thank God I wasn't smelling burnt toast. It took about 3 seconds before the word Jesus started to come out, and it was a serious struggle, and frankly, it didn't seem to help, but I continued to do it anyway. Eventually, I could speak, and I hollered, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I demand you to leave," as I was physically coming out of the paralysis. I was on my back and opened my eyes in my pitch dark bedroom and saw my ceiling covered in an even darker squiggly things. I blinked my eyes a few times and yeah, they were still there. I commanded whatever the hell they were to leave using Jesus as a name, and some, but not all of them, started to fade. I closed my eyes, opened them again to see an octopus like dark mass over the ceiling. I found a picture on Heidi Hollis's Shadow People website, and she calls them shadow spiders. I thought to recite the Lord's Prayer as I heard it is very powerful against negative entities, and about half of them vanished. The second I tried to say the prayer, I struggled to remember the words and had to grab my phone to pull the prayer up and read it. Yeah, I have several prayers and psalms in my Samsung Notes app for just an occasion. After that, they were all gone. I turned on the light trying to figure out what the literal fuck just happened. That shadow spider picture is kind of creepy. Jim goes on. I have a motion sensitive camera I turn on in my bedroom at night for just this kind of occasion. I use it for this and the times when my Galaxy Watch sleep app has a large gap or gaps in its recording. Just want to be sure I'm not sleepwalking or getting abducted, and if I am, I want to see that footage. A few days prior, I activated it, and even though in the past I never picked up on anything other than common dust, orbs, and on a few occasions, some bigger, fast moving orb like things that left the trail behind. I had a camera on this night and was surprised to get a video of me waking up from the sleep paralysis. And I was glad to see Elsie on the bed throughout the whole thing and being the faithful guardian she is. She hadn't slept with me at night since Lacey and Bam Bam passed. She always curled up with one or both of them when they were still here. I'm also surprised only the sleep paralysis wake up was picked up and not me reciting the Lord's Prayer twice. When Isaac and I connected Sunday evening, I asked if I could voice record our Zoom meeting, which he permitted. I relayed everything that happened the previous week through the nightmare the night before. When he was ready to do his thing, he had me walk around each room holding my phone out so he could see. He'd tell me to stop, turn the phone upward, downward, side to side if he picked up on anything. Did the same on the second floor for each room, starting in the bedroom where my ghost cam was actively on. Once he was done, we chatted for about an hour and I went to bed. We had started much later in the evening than planned, and now it was 2 hours past my usual bedtime to be up at work at 4:30 a.m. When I got home on Monday, I immediately went over the cam and audio recordings. Nothing was recorded on my phone. It recorded for over an hour and a half, but it was total silence. I checked the ghost cam and it picked up great audio as we moved from the hallway to room to room. Even the floorboard creaks of a 103-year-old house could be heard as I walked. Not a thing was recorded while we were in the bedroom, just the room before and those after. I've done many voice recordings over the years of readings with no issues. The ghost cam is very sensitive and tends to pick up the slightest sound or movement, so it's super odd both devices failed to do their job during that time. I still stay in touch with Isaac and his wife Megan, and have not had anything of note to happen since he came and cleared my home out. Well, other than one of my guides, an ancestor slash deceased family member, or random lost ghost checking me out. To date, 10/30/25, I have not had any issues. Best, Jim. So that was the initial message from Jim. I did follow up with Jim apologizing for not getting back to him sooner. And he did respond back to the first part of the email, thanking me for sympathies with Lacey. And we talked about some local stuff about the Steelers and some food places around here. But yeah, the Steelers suck. And that's a conversation for another time. But I'm going to pick up about midway from the email where Jim talks about maybe jinxing himself. So Jim says, and as for nothing happening since last April, I may have jinxed myself. Yesterday morning, as I was coming down the stairs preparing to leave from work, it sounded like a fistful of small rocks were thrown onto the hardwood floor in the dining room. It was loud, and LT bolted from the dog bed she was sleeping on and ran out the dog door. I figured she just knocked something over and it spilled on the floor, but everything was in place with nothing unusual. During the earlier part of the last 10 years, stuff like that would happen routinely. There'd be a crash from the second floor or another room, like a stack of boxes being knocked over or a big piece of furniture that was lifted and dropped. I'd go check it out only to find everything was in place and no explanation for the noise. When these things happen, the pets react to it as well. So I know I'm not crazy. Anyway, I look forward to the next episodes and hope you and your family have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you and your family had a great Thanksgiving as well, Jim. Thanks again for sharing your story. There's a couple of things that came to mind, Jim, while reading your story. I initially did a pre-read of your story, and then, reading this again has me thinking about what I brought up to Dakota on my previous episode, which released last Friday, on episode, I believe it was 143, is if he thought he was some sort of magnet to the paranormal due to his past. Because he did mention, I believe it was his grandmother or his great grandmother was a witch. I truly believe when we have people in our family lineage that dabble within witchcraft or the paranormal, it can be a beacon, these entities to come and check us out. Some latch on, some are negative, some are positive, some just come and go. But I do want to explore the concept that you might be a magnet, Jim. And I don't say that in a bad way or a bad connotation. I say that in the sense that I'll say it with this example. Dave the Bearded Menace, when I talked to him offline and those 3 episodes that we did, his example was that some of us that experience the paranormal, that the paranormal world is this dark place, and we are a beacon of light that these things are attracted to, whether positive or negatively. It's not anything that we did wrong that draws these entities to us, these negative entities to us. I personally believe this might be the case for you, Jim, where you might be that beacon like the rest of us, where these things know that you can feel them, you can hear them, and they latch on to that. One thing that I will say with the shadow people, that shadow spider coming to you, I truly think, with the loss of Lacey, that might have attracted whatever that was. These things like to feed off of our depression, our sadness, our anger, because I'm sure, like whenever you lose something, you get really pissed off, you get really sad, you get really depressed. So you go we all go through these multitude of emotions, these negative emotions that we have to let go of, but these things might feed off of. One thing I wanted to go back to was at the beginning of your email, you said this isn't a ghost story per se, and you're not sure how to categorize it. I would definitely say these are, in fact, ghost stories. These could be categorized as ghost stories. You have had experiences with the paranormal similar to what I've had, similar to what my other guests have had, and other people who have shared their experiences on other podcasts. So I'll definitely say, Jim, I would I would park these in like a ghost story type of box. I think you're the second person that has written into the show that's had a shadow person spider experience. So that's always intriguing. But Jim, if you ever want to go into detail about any other experiences you've had, feel free to send us an email. We could make an episode out of them if you're comfortable with that, or we could just keep it private. That's totally up to you. But just keep doing what you're doing to protect yourself. That's all I can really say. When I do recordings of episodes that I know guests are going to share some really dark shit that had happened to them, I will make it a point to light a candle. I'll have holy water or something, whatever you need to do to protect yourself. And the last thing I'll say is that always pay attention to the animals. The animals know when something is not right. They will be your first indication of something is amiss in the home or there's some sort of entity there. One thing I always say is if my animals are okay, I'm okay. But Jim, thank you once again for sharing this story with us. We appreciate it. Again, you have both mine and Dean's sympathies about Lacey. Folks, if you have a story just like Jim does, and you would like for us to share it on an episode, just reach out to us at twroadpodcast@gmail.com. All of our links will be in the episode description if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, and it will be in the video description if you are watching or listening on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will catch you on the next one.
You've reached the end of tonight's journey on the Wandering Road. The show is written and produced by me, Chris, and my co-host, Dean. If you've got a scary story of your own, or if you'd like to join us as a guest, send your tale to twroadpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to follow us on social media for more haunted fun. And if you enjoyed tonight's episode, please rate, review, and share the show. It helps keep the lantern burning for fellow travelers. Until next time, keep your eyes on the road and your mind in the shadows, because the wandering never ends.